So as it currently stands, classic Sonic will have fully 2D gameplay, modern Sonic will have boost gameplay with 2D sections, and the third character is going to be something completely new, most likely something that's really out there, kinda like Silver's gameplay or the Werehog. And since Dreamcast Sonic has pretty much been slammed by Aaron Webber, I doubt that will ever happen in any Sonic game at this point. I even think they're retconning the 3 eras from Generations as well, and just making it 2 eras now. So not only does Dreamcast Sonic not exist, but the Dreamcast era from Generations is essentially dead. It's almost like adventure fans don't exist as Sonic Team. We're just seen as delusional people who can't see that the boost games are a superior evolution of the Spin Dash games. So we need a solution. Now the reason people wanted Dreamcast Sonic was for the unique gameplay it offered compared to the boost games. But since Dreamcast Sonic will never happen, the current solution to fixing Sonic Forces is to fix modern Sonic. Now this video is going to be heavily opinionated, so you probably won't agree with everything I say. That being said, I'm not about to describe my ideal Sonic game. The reason being, I'm going to be working with the limitations of Sonic Forces. The limitations being things that have already been confirmed, so I can't change them. For example, I prefer the Spin Dash to the boost, but in this video, modern Sonic will still have the boost because it's already been confirmed for Sonic Forces. And before people get butthurt, I'm not saying Sonic Forces will be bad by any stretch of the imagination. I'm simply saying that we don't know enough about the game to truly know if it will be great. All we can do is hope, or in this case, present ideas that, if used in the final game, could help lead Sonic Forces to being cemented as a great Sonic game. And final disclaimer, this is obviously a video talking about what I want to see. So this isn't confirmed news, this isn't speculation, and this isn't me talking about what I think we'll actually see. I will also be taking into consideration the things that a lot of Sonic fans have mentioned wanting to see in Sonic games. Now before we get into modern Sonic, let's briefly discuss the other 2 characters, Classic Sonic and the third character. We'll just call him Third Boy for now. Now we know Classic Sonic is a fully 2D playstyle. I will most likely be my least favorite character in the game. I just have a 3D bias, that's the truth. Therefore, I would like Classic Sonic to have the least amount of stages in the game. Think Amy Rose in SA1. She had like 3 stages, which is nothing compared to any of the other stories. Even Big had more stages. While that was a shame in SA1 because I loved Amy's story, I think this will work well for Classic Sonic. I'm not saying 3 stages exactly, but it will be harder to hate him if he only occupies like 20% of the game. Plus, I don't want the game to rely too much on nostalgia, and the other 2 characters represent more new than Classic Sonic. And for Classic Sonic, just try and emulate the feel of the classics and be original. That's all I can say. Now that we've got that out of the way, I think Third Boy should occupy about 40% of the game. You don't really know anything about his gameplay, so I'll keep my solution short and sweet. Make him fully 3D, all original stages, don't force me to search for shit, and the rest, well, Sonic Team can surprise me. So now, with Classic Sonic occupying 20% of the game, Third Boy occupying 40%, that leaves a good 40% of the game for modern Sonic. For all 3 of these characters, the stage themes should really stand out. I want the stages to show the graphical power of the Hedgehog engine too. I like the visuals of the modern Sonic stage we saw previously, so that's a good start. So let's talk about modern Sonic now. To fix him, we need to incorporate certain elements from the Dreamcast era into the current Sonic. As much as I yap on about Dreamcast Sonic, I think Sonic's personality was fine up until Colors ruined it. Whoever was writing the story for games such as SA1, SA2 and Unleashed needs to come back. I want to see that kind of plot, in terms of balancing the dark tone with the light-hearted moments. Back in the day, Sonic was the right combination of heroic and cocky, but these days he's just cocky. And Roger Craig Smith shines in that category, but that's not what I want for Sonic's personality, and I feel a lot of people agree with me on that. Roger works in the Boom cartoon because that character was built for him. But for modern Sonic, ideally I want Jason Griffith or Ryan Drummond to come back. But if not one of them, then they need to find a voice actor that embodies what Griffith and Drummond did, which was that balance between heroic and cocky. Most of the current voice cast is great, just change Sonic, Shadow and Amy's voices and we good. Now let's get into the gameplay. To give a vague summary, I want them to incorporate certain elements of SA1 and 06's level design into these stages, as well as a few other games. Now since we have the boost, I'd imagine that'd be hard, as spin dash jumping to take crazy shortcuts is something you can't really do with the boost. I mean, you can boost jump, but it's not as effective as spin dash jumping from what I've tested. But as we saw in the 40 seconds of Modern Sonic gameplay, we have the boost wisp returning, and potentially other wisps. This likely means that the boost won't be as OP as it was in Unleashed in Generations, and that's a good thing. So we're going to use this to our advantage. In these stages, the boost should be heavily rationed out, meaning you'll be using it less than 50% of the time, and the boost wisp will only be given to you in the most linear of sections so you can blast through. I'm talking loops, corkscrews, linear corridors with enemies, rails, and on water. That's it. The remainder of the time, you'll be doing platforming, exploration, and combat. The stages will be huge, expansive. Think Modern Seaside Hill from Generations when you don't take the bobsled, or think Ocean Palace in Heroes. There will be a lot of branching paths, but overall it'll still be a linear game. I'm not looking for Sonic Utopia or Green Hill Paradise Act 2. No offense, it's just those things are always fun to try out, but I don't see them as the definitive Sonic experience. SA1 had a great balance of linear and open, so that's the inspiration I'm using here. There will be a great amount of 3D platforming present. Some parts will be above bottomless pits, so you can get that adrenaline rush knowing that if you fail you're gonna die. Of course this won't really be a problem because Sonic will control similarly to how he did in SA1 when he's not boosting, only slightly faster. His controls will be fluid and have a floaty jump, but with a more fluid jump dash like Heroes. 2D sections were confirmed for this game, so I have to work that limitation into the stages somehow. First of all, the 2D sections should be few and far between. When they do happen, expect a lot of vertical platforming. Even though it's 2D, I want to feel like the stage is still huge and not like I'm limited. Think the end of Power Plant in Sonic Heroes. While it's still technically 3D in that game, as you have full 3D control, the camera is still panned, and I feel that section overall just serves as a great guide for what 2D sections could be like. I mean, you've got the lava rushing up, so you can't stand still. You gotta move fast. You could have a lot of platforms that will fall if you stand on them too long, meaning if you fall, that's it. I just want there to be some kind of adrenaline rush in the 2D sections, like it's do or die. Sonic Rush did this well in stages like Altitude Limit. They can also incorporate some ideas from the 2D sections in Jungle Joyride, as a lot of them were pretty fun as well. Basically, I don't want 2D sections that just give us level design that could easily work better in 3D. Wall jumping will also return alongside 3D wall jumping from Heroes, and that will be used to do some creative challenges in 2D and 3D within the levels. Now, although I mentioned the boost being confined to the linear sections of the game, once you master the level design, you'll be able to use the boost in more tricky sections of the game to speed through otherwise slower platforming sections, similar to playing time attack mode in Sonic Rush. So basically, incentive to get good. Since wisps were also confirmed, I hope that they keep it simple, as in not too many wisps. My solution is to have 4 wisps. The first would obviously be the boost wisp. The second would be a wisp that could make Sonic fly, kinda like Tails did in SA1, but less OP. This will be used for certain platforming sections to keep the platforming fresh and Heroes-esque. For the third wisp, have the laser wisp, but this time have him control like the sky blue gem in 06. And finally, have a blast wisp, as in something to kill all the enemies on screen. And it'd be your job to use it in crucial situations. Now I know what you're thinking. Your job? But you can only hold on to one wisp at a time, right? Well, yes, but in this game, the blast wisp will have a separate gauge on the HUD, and it will be filled by defeating enemies. This works because usually defeating enemies and getting rings would fill your boost gauge, but the boost gauge is going to be filled by the boost wisp. So by defeating enemies to fill a separate gauge, there's an actual purpose to defeating enemies besides your final end of stage rank. Now that we talked about speed, platforming, and exploration, that leaves combat. First things first, I want there to be more combat in the stages. I know a lot of people will disagree on this, but these are my opinions. Think Team Rose from Sonic Heroes. Not as many enemies as Team Sonic, but still a good amount. Most enemies should require 1 hit to kill, but some harder enemies should require up to 3 hits. And for those harder enemies, they should have legitimate attacks that you need to know how to avoid to defeat the enemy without losing your rings. Think of the enemies in Crazy Gadget, as well as that hammer enemy from Sonic Rush. Now, not all the enemies will have to be defeated to proceed through the stage, but there will be some points where that does happen. If you're smart, you'll kill the optional enemies to build up your blast wisp gauge. That way you'll have that ability ready to use when you're forced to kill a huge wad of enemies to proceed. I know a lot of people don't like being forced to kill enemies to proceed, and that's why I'm not overdoing it here, but I truly do love that. Now you can see why I love Heroes, 06, Rush, and the Werehog. People see that as pace breaking, and I just kind of see it as good variety. Now another thing that must be added to the solution is Lightspeed Dashing. Remember how prominent that was in the Dreamcast era games such as SA2 and Heroes? Where did it go? Maybe the boost was so fast that they didn't need it anymore, as Generations only had like 2 Lightspeed dashes in the entire game. In this game, you should be able to Lightspeed dash on any trail of rings and get points for it. And there will be some sections where Lightspeed dashing at the right time will be crucial to surviving or reaching another path. Thankfully, the stomp will be mapped to a separate button, so there really should be no issue here. And another thing, the Lightspeed dash needs to be fast, and I mean fast. In this era of Sonic where he's always boosting, it's hard to appreciate the speed of the Lightspeed dash in games like SA1 and SA2, so they really need to amp up the speed. I'll have a little mock-up on the screen for you. In reality, it should be faster than the boost. I mean, the boost isn't supposed to be as fast as Lightspeed, right? The stage length on average should be 4 to 7 minutes, assuming you've mastered the stage. Earlier stages in the game may fall on the lower end of that range, and later stages may fall on the higher end. But on your first playthrough, the stages will definitely be longer than that. For example, my first playthrough of Crazy Gadget took me over 15 minutes, and that's not including all the deaths. But now I can do it in like 6 minutes, so it's a 6-minute stage for me. So when I say 4 to 7 minutes, if you suck, you could be there for 10, but that gives you incentive to practice and get a better time, which will go great with the time attack mode that I think this game should have. Now speaking of rankings, in my opinion, Generations had a piss easy ranking system. So for this game, have the main ranking system similar to games like SA2 and Heroes, where getting the highest rank wasn't just handed to you. It can't just be based on time and rings. Performing rainbow ring tricks, doing Lightspeed dashes, killing enemies, and doing all that fast should be the basis for getting an S rank. Now that we've talked about stages, I want to quickly touch on bosses. Honestly, just take inspiration from some of the bosses in SA1 and 06. Egg Hornet, Egg Viper, Egg Genesis, and Egg Cerberus were all simple and fun bosses in my opinion. And since only 3 characters are playable and 2 of them are Sonics, I would definitely appreciate 1 or 2 character battles in this game, as long as it's relevant to the story. Maybe even a Sonic versus the new character Third Boy. But yeah, these are my ideas on how to make Sonic Forces great. Obviously you won't agree with all of my thoughts, but I think the end result of a game like this would probably be considered a good game, maybe even a great game. Once again, I doubt the game will actually turn out the way I just said, but that doesn't mean I don't think Sonic Forces will be good. Either way, I have high hopes for Sonic Forces. As a Sonic fan, I want to see Sonic succeed, and while I may have my criticisms at times, I still wish the best for this game. But let me know if you like my ideas or not, and let me know what you would change, or if you don't like any of my ideas and you want to list your own ideas in the comment section, you can do that as well. But yeah, that's all I have to say right now, so the Remy out.